Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Mat Chat, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. My pleasure today to be joined by two of my best friends in wrestling and two of the most respected minds in wrestling. From Greater Heights Wrestling, Jason Keck, and from Michigan Rev Wrestling, Mario Flores. First of all, boys, want to publicly thank you for all the help you've given me over the years with the events. And good afternoon. How are you guys?
Doing well. How's it going?
So, probably sleep deprived, if you guys are going to be honest. We're recording this a few days after the Spokane tournament. And to be completely honest, I was in Kansas City this past weekend. One of my ex-wrestlers had his last fight in the UFC, retired in the cage. So that was emotional. I was watching all the updates. I was with Scott Cuthbert. Shout out to him, Missouri State Director on the girls' side. We were just talking about the growth of women's wrestling and putting a spotlight on that and talking about, especially on the USA Wrestling side of things. And we'll get into all things sort of girls and women's wrestling. So, Mario, I'll start out with you. You were truly instrumental in the girls' matchups we put together at Michigan Border Brawl. You put a matchup together that those girls combined won 4 stop signs that summer, which was crazy. If that was a boys match, people be talking about that for the last 5 years. But Sabrina Noss and Savannah Isaac, they both go and win cadets and juniors, and they wrestled each other. And Isaac wrestled it as the second match of her day.
Yeah.
So, talk about a hammer. Just major takeaways from the tournament, and then we'll get into some specifics.
I thought the depth was exceptional. You had a lot, like for age groups, you had a lot of different kids that went out there and just got after it. They were scrapping early. Round of 32, round 2, Concy side wrestling, Concy rounds like 4, 5, and 6. That blood round of 12 were just meat grinders of a tournament. So if you got you didn't have any separation or seeding criteria, and you got bumped in round 2, and you had to wrestle 5, 6 matches back just to get into that blood round. They were scrapping. I mean, you saw some world medalists, placing 4, 5, 6 in some of those charts. So for me personally, I thought the depth was exceptional. And then, and then to have that representation getting ready to head out to, whatever country their age group is in is just going to be awesome. So I was happy with it.
Yeah. Jason, same just initial thoughts on the tournament.
Yeah, the level of just the coaches that I like, we're watching matches and we're looking at each other, and it's like, wow, the techniques, the positioning, just the level of excellence on the mat is something that you notice right away. So, when we're watching those matches, it's just amazing at what those girls and women are doing, and just the prowess of the mental side of it, the physical side of it, and just being at the top of your game. If you're not, like Coach said, if you're not at the top of your game in that tournament, then you're wrestling on the backside pretty quickly.
Yeah. So nobody will see this in time, so I can say this. So today's Wednesday. We record weighing in on Thursday, and Grant Turner's in Zagreb right now for the Euros. So we have a special guest host tomorrow with Ostrander and I, and it's Gary Abbott, rather. And so, talk about GOAT stuff, right? I better get a good night's sleep and have my caffeine and everything else.
Do your homework.
Do your homework. Yeah, but also a mentor, right? To I think all of us, directly or indirectly, me directly. But I talked to him about the tournament, and he said the same thing. He mentioned you guys would know the weight class, but there was one weight class where a number 25 seed and an unseeded girl met in the finals.
That was us.
You were on the wrong side of it, I'm taking.
Yes, we defaulted. Brutal, but it went to a third match. So think about that. And we're talking about our wrestler wrestled Skylar Slade and Little Soldier on on our semi bracket, and I think they had like a world medalist on their quarter bracket. It was crazy. So it was Belicia Manuel. She crushed it. She had you know what I mean? Talk about an unranked girl running through world level athletes, and then seeing the girl from Georgia in the final there. So
yeah, Gary's been great. Like when when we do the border brawl, like he comes in person, which we both, all of us have been there for that. Both of you guys have been, and just having Gary Abbott sitting at the table gives your event more credibility. He spearheads the girls' high school rankings. So he talked about a lot of the stuff that went on there, and I'm going to talk to some of those things with him tomorrow. But let's get the perspective from you guys as coaches. So Jason, you went out there with Angelina Vargas. She's a Kansas City girl, 2-time state champ out of Park Hill, a Greater Heights kid, obviously. I think the only loss she took this year was to Ava Ward at Wonder Woman. And she goes out there and double AAs as a high school sophomore, under 17. She's probably 15, 16 years old. You would know better than me. And she just came off beating Peyton Hand 10-0 and winning the Outstanding Wrestler at the Oklahoma Border Brawl. I'll give you my impressions of her. She's just like a genuinely nice kid. I did some jiu-jitsu with her one time. But she's also mean as hell when she needs to be. And, still implementing that jiu-jitsu into her wrestling, which in folk style, there's a little more margin of error for than in freestyle with back exposure. But you're a guy I know that will support your kids anywhere around the country. And I know you made that trip. Tell me what that experience was like. So I saw some of your posts, both as you and Greater Heights, and it looked like a super memorable weekend for the two of you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, anytime your athlete goes out and performs at a level they're capable of, then it's a good weekend. The competition is so fierce at those tournaments. And like Coach said, one of the things that I think really helped Angelina is she had some separation or some seeding criteria. So she was able to get through a couple matches before the quarters. And then, we kept joking. I was like, every win on the front side's worth 2 or 3 on the back side.
That is the math. That is the math.
Yes. And so like, I think in her head, that was a positive that, especially making it to the quarters. It's like, okay, now we just got to get one more and you're on the podium. And then, and so that mindset and having that separation or seating criteria, I think is important at those, national level events. If you don't have that, it makes for it could make for a rough go. So having that, I think certainly helped her. I think one of the challenges that she had is she had to make weight 4 days in a row, scratch weight. And one of the days she had to make weight twice in the same day within a couple of hours. So she had to make the scratch weight for U17s in the medal round at 7:30 in the morning. And then she had to weigh in for U20s at 11:30, a few hours later. And she had to compete in between that time. And, you want to get hydrated. You want to feel good because it's a medal match. And, it certainly posed some new challenges, but she did a really great job in taking those on. We were sitting in the sauna one of the nights and talking about just mindset stuff. What's the difference in, you performing well here versus, maybe a time that you didn't, and just trying to get some feedback from the athlete, I think is important on how to get them in the right mindset or how to coach them for the next event, like Vegas coming up. So, one of the things she's like, I really liked it when you do this or when you do that. And then I'm introspective. If there are things that I think she doesn't like, I'm like, hey, do you not, what happens when I do this or that, or when the coach does this or that, or do you like, one of the things that I was talking to her about is, does she like watching the matches of her opponents before the match? And she's like, I want you to show me 2 or 3 things that they can do. I don't want to watch the whole match. Just find me a couple things that they have their positioning of where they score. Let me see that. And then that's all I need, And so that's, I mean, some athletes don't want to see it at all. They just want to think about what they're good at and what they got to get to. Others are super technical. And they want to watch the whole match. They want to see how the matches unfold, the strategy of the match and all that. So I think it's important to have that communication with your athlete as a coach and to know your athlete.
Yeah, 2 points before I jump over to Mario. One is you and me had actually talked like the day or two before you went down there, and it was interesting listening to your mind work. You know, I mean, you and I are good friends, but obviously I respect you a ton as a coach, and I might do it a little differently this time, and here's my thought process, and you know, it's fun to be a part of that. And then the other thing which you talked about, and I certainly want Mario to chime in on this as well, but I'm blessed enough for the last 3 or 4 years to do the on-the-ground interviews at the NCAAs, you know, the one that you see post up, either it's on USA Wrestling or Intermat or Rockfin or Flow, because we're all just holding the same camera, just a different angle of the person's head. And what I've seen more often than not is those guys don't even know who they're wrestling next, and they don't care. And they're not paying much attention unless their coach tells them, like, hey, Mario's got like a really good sweep single to the left side, you know. And then I think the coaching mentality is we're doing what we do to be the problem. We're not worried about that other person being the problem. And I think about back on my coaching and athletic career, and I was probably the opposite. Like I was worried about everything. I was probably over scouting, and probably if I did it over again, I would probably not do that as much because I don't know if I was helping my guys' confidence. Like, well, you got to be really worried about what Jason does here or Mario does here, as opposed to saying, yeah, these guys are good. It's the semis and nationals, but listen, you just do you. Just be aware of this 1 or 2 things like Lena was saying. So, you know, Mario, I know you got a whole crew of girls out there, Nos and others. And, you know, to full disclosure, when we first did Michigan Border Brawl, you were referred to me by Terry Pack, and you said, call me back in 2 days, and had 17 girls on speakerphone that all wanted to wrestle. So that was impressive. So, and, you know, you're like every wrestling coach in the world, unless every kid pins or texts everybody, you're not happy. But overall, what were some of the you know, like your interactions with your kids this weekend? What did you learn that maybe people who are watching this can take away as nuggets?
Start your training early, right? And I know that you're given a timeline of you know, execution, and when you get that timeline, get going, right? Some of us know that next year, mid-March, we're going to do that. So that was one thing where the schedule of the calendar jumping up a month came into play, where we had to kind of change our intensity a few weeks ago. That way we jumped in and we were putting in long hours getting ready because we had to try to peak. And so we needed a little bit of mat time. And so we found a tournament that we had to go through. So, I mean, the planning for the tournament from a coaching side was really, we had to kind of expedite the training cycle where you had the high school state tournament, and then, hey, I know that we were there, and then we insert 10 days in training camp in India. So when we came back, it was, you know, get healthy again. And once we were there, then we had to really jump into the training. So that was one kind of thing that we experienced. But then looking at the bracket, and hey, you were talking about Jason's experience. You know, we wrestled that quarterfinal match and against Angelina. So Gigi Bragg wrestled Angelina in that quarterfinal, and
crazy match.
They scored. We threw a brick, and it was like a 2-point match. They came back. We won the brick. Now we're up. Angelina roars back at the break, and then they trade shots. It was a fun match to watch. So when you're talking about just being a fan of the sport, just 2 high-level competitors like that was fun. So, and then we watched Angelina just, you know, kind of run through and really kind of open my eyes to what a good athlete she is. So kudos to you guys for that. Aside from the tournament, I thought we did well when we're talking about just in-house performances. You know, we had a couple of champs, you know, 4 in the finals and 10 All-Americans for this group.
Yeah, it's not bad.
No, I was super happy with that. You know, but again, as a coach, I thought we left food on the table. And when when you go out there, you expect to not even to do as best, do your very best. So there were some things that we go back to the drawing board and make some adjustments and improvements on the things that we can, the controllables, and then really kind of turn our heads to, the next goal. And so that's kind of where we're sitting. But as for an overall performance, I can't be mad at them. I know that I'm pretty hard on them sometimes, but they wrestled great, and the experience was fun. It was our first time out to Spokane for a handful of people. So I know that we're looking for an evaluation on that. And I know that there was a handful of conversations and opinions going about the environment, the training, and the location. Other than travel, I was really happy with that. So travel getting there was pretty lengthy. Just from where we are, I know some people had easier paths to get there, but you're talking about a couple flights and make for a long day. So going out, if I do something different, I'm really going to go out that extra day early. So that's one thing that I think that people should consider is getting out there, because I didn't account for that much travel. I think that you're like, hey, I'm going out a day early, but it's really like I didn't get in till 2 a.m. day early. So that was one thing that I really kind of I'll make an adjustment for next year.
Yeah, when I was coaching the JUCOs, they put it out in Spokane one year, and my dad was like, he's if he watches this, I won't say he's old. He's an experienced, wise man, and he was like, "We're going to go a day early," and because the time zones and everything else, and finding the grocery store and finding a place to work out and all those things that I think anybody who's watching this, who's ever coached or competed, when you have a routine, when you have a rhythm, and those you control as many of the variables as you can, it leads to maybe not necessarily a better performance, but more calmness going into the event. Like if you wrestle in Kansas City or Michigan, your kids are going to be way more comfortable, than just because they know, like, okay, I sleep in my bed. It's, 16-minute drive to the arena, that kind of stuff. So I talked to you guys about this off air. I certainly don't want to run through every single bracket, but I'm interested in your guys' overall things. I'll start with the weight I think that kind of was the headliner weight, which is 76 kgs, U20s, which was Kylie Welker and Blades. And I think Noss was in that division too, right? And placed 4th or something like that, if I have it correct.
Yep.
So there's enough stop signs over there to cause a traffic jam in that weight class alone. So, I guess you coached in that division, Mario, obviously. So the thing that I took away from that weight is Adeline Gray is one of the all-time great wrestlers, not all-time great women's wrestlers, all-time great wrestlers in American history and really the world when you look at her resume. But that weight class seems like it's in pretty good hands going forward. Let me just start it. Am I right on that? And then what did you take away from that tournament, that bracket of the tournament?
So think about the depth, and when you're talking about and not just beyond, even the other medalists were phenomenal wrestlers. So 76 was a meat grinder. Obviously, you had Welker and Blades, and then Brooklyn Hayes. I saw her wrestle the final. She was last year at Fargo. She was split between 2 of our girls, so we were able to watch her wrestle. But I've never really seen her that up close. And then we wrestled her twice. I don't know if you saw that on the chart. Sabrina wrestled her like in round 2. So when we're talking about off the scale and separation criteria, Sabrina's a 16-year-old sophomore, and so bumping up to U20s because there's not a weight class for us. At U17 it's only like 160. So even though she's a U17 wrestler, we still had to move her up and I was like, listen, you're gonna have to do it either way. At some point, those girls aren't going anywhere. Blades or Welker, those guys aren't going there. Brooklyn Hayes, there was a handful of girls on those charts, and I was like, let's go, little lady. And and then we drew Brooklyn Hayes match 2 off the scale, and she really she just kind of dominated us a little bit, and that's crazy to say, but it happened. And so then we went back, and then you're talking about somebody, a Sabrina Noss, number 4 pound for pound girl. She had to battle back 4 or 5 matches against college All-Americans, round after round after round. And then once she placed, she still had 2 more matches after that, right? So you get into you have that blood round match, was it Saturday night? And then you have 2 more consi matches in the morning to get back to that 3rd place match where she's wrestling college All-Americans. And then you saw the Welker Blades, 2 of, best of 2 was going over there. And that was down to like, what was it? The last 5 seconds. I think Kennedy scored like in the inside of 10 seconds. She scored late to take that match won. Yeah. So we were back and forth watching both matches, and you're like, wow, these kids are good. Well, women, but they're young ladies, and they're awesome. So 76 kgs was crazy deep. So
yeah. So Jason, tell me a little bit about the depth at some of the other weights that you saw, whether it's Lena's weight or just wherever where, like we said, there's a ton of credentials. Like I spoke to Ava Ward's father this week, and, I'm partial to the Missouri girls because I know them more. I actually follow the Michigan girls probably more so than any other state just because I know Mario, but Ava's a girl that's won just about everything, and she didn't win that tournament. And I mean, there's no harm in that. Like, it just tells you how good that tournament is. Like you were sending me updates on semis and stuff like that. And Cuthbert and I are literally eating barbecue in the 2nd best city in Missouri for barbecue. We're at Jack Stacks, and we got this, we got the phones turned sideways, and with the Resolite guy, we're all nerding out watching wrestling like it should be. So, thoughts on specific kids or weight classes that really impressed you both now and then going forward for USA Wrestling?
Yeah. So first off, you were talking about the Welker Blades match, and it's awesome also to be able to sit there with your athlete and watch things unfold, because that takedown, Mark Perry, the coach, had been talking about Blades getting to Welker's wrist, and you're watching as the period unfolds, and like, why is he telling her to get there? Why is he telling her, and she gets the wrist and hits her sweep single right at the end of the match to basically secure the takedown. And then it was posted on Flow, that takedown, and you could see her grabbing the wrist and her basically shooting with one hand and then limping out, and she's got to hold the wrist the whole time. And then she catches the wrist and uses it to turn, and just really, really impressed with the coachability of her to be able to hear the instruction in the crux of the match of when it matters most, and then to be able to execute the technique. So I thought that was really impressive. That was one thing that stood out. Audrey Jimenez really impressed me with her positioning. Like, she is so freaking hard to score on. Like, I told Lena, I'm like, watch her matches with Nyla Valencia, and Nyla is obviously a good attacker. But I mean, I think Audrey Jimenez has some of the best positioning period that I've seen over the course of the last year. I mean, she is just so rock solid in her defense, her first line defense, her counterattacks. And so she was probably one of the that impressed me the most, if I just had to pick one. And then, like you said, the 53 kg that Angelina was in, you've got several, anytime you got several world team members,
that's a party. That's a party right there.
that aren't wrestling for first or second, then you got a good bracket. I think Coach hit the nail on the head with talking about the depth. It's just awesome, because it's only gonna get deeper. It's only going to get deeper. Girls are starting younger. They're getting better coached. They're some of these girls that we're seeing now didn't have a chance to start at 8 or 10 years old. And so now, like in our club, we've got 20 girls that are in that age group that are competing now. And so, the first thing I did is got on our little team app and said, listen, you got to go to a wrestler. You need to, number one, make sure they're getting exposure to freestyle. And number two, you need to get them out at that tournament so they can get some experience and they can watch high level women's wrestling, at its best. And so, man, it's so awesome to see our sport in such a good position when it comes to the future of women's wrestling.
Yeah, for sure. The thing you talked about being exposed to stuff, I think most people watch this podcast. My dad was a college coach for a long, long time. And one year, my dad did his graduate work at Iowa State, and they used to have the Harold Nichols Open over Christmas. And one year, me and my brother went up there with him, and Dave Schultz is wrestling Kevin Jackson in the final. So, talk about a pretty high-level final. A few gold medals in that match. And Dave Schultz almost murdered Kevin Jackson. Got on top and bent leg turked him. It was almost criminal what he did to him. And he did something in a front headlock that had him just screaming. And, Kevin Jackson still is built like a house, but back then, he looked like a cartoon, so I go to my dad. I'm I don't know, 10, 11, 12 years old. I'm like, hey, Dad, what did he do? He goes, well, just go ask him. And I'm like, no, Dave Schultz is over in the back. He's sweating like crazy. And he walks up. My dad walks me over there and says, Dave, this is my son, David. He has a question for you. So I said, Mr. Schultz, and Dave Schultz sweated all over me for 10 minutes and showed me exactly what he did and had me do it on him, pretended to scream like it hurt, all those things. And, when Dave Schultz passed, I told Nancy Schultz that story. And so part of it's the legend of Dave Schultz, but part of it is what you guys are saying. When you're around these people that are doing incredible things, if you don't have a tremendous level of confidence, you don't necessarily think that's going to be me someday. And maybe it's you weren't raised that way. Maybe you had parents that weren't super positive. Maybe you just live a life where people, Keck and I talk all the time. Our parents told us we could be president when we grew up, but we coach people that weren't mentored that way. And I think what you guys are saying, you get out there, Mario, you had 10 All-Americans. You had a few girls that I'm sure didn't All-American, but they're in the same room as these 10 All-Americans. They're like, okay, she puts her left shoe on first, just like I do. She doesn't run a whole lot faster than I do. And it becomes from this level that I could never get there to, okay, I got to get better, but there's a blueprint, and the same person that coached this person is coaching me, and they believe in me as much as I believe in them. And to me, that's the biggest thing my dad did for us growing up was we were around all these absolute hammers. I was wrestling with college guys when I was 12, going to tournaments like this, and you don't realize it till you're older, what a gift that was. And, now these kids clubs, you have both you guys have kids where 8-year-olds are in the same room as 18-year-olds. And from what I've seen, there's a lot of really good human beings in wrestling. And these 18-year-olds, a lot of times will mentor these 8 or 10-year-olds. So I see you guys both nodding, Mario, is that kind of how you see it in your club? And is there any?
It has to be, right? So when we're on the road, who's running practice, right? Fortunately for us, we had, Dylan Gilcher, 4-time state champ, top 5 kid going to Michigan. And we had Drew Heathice, 3-time state champ going to Princeton. They ran the youth practices while I'm at the trials. So it is the give back to the give back. And I think that's what makes wrestling special is you can go and ask. It's not like some little kid can, run up on a basketball court or on a football field and ask them, hey, could you show me how you throw that spiral? Or, hey, can you show me how you read that play? And in wrestling, you can go up and see your role models or your heroes, and the thing is most wrestlers are awesome, and they're like, sure, I'll show you, and then they go and they show them. So it's one of those that makes wrestling special. I mean, I'm sure you guys would agree.
No, and I'm going to ask Jason his opinion, but that memory for me is 40 years ago, the story I told, and it's like yesterday. and like at the beginning, all I was upset about was how sweaty I was. And then my dad later said, do you realize what just happened? So yeah. So Jason, I mean, I know your club a little better, but I assume you guys are doing the same sort of thing with mentorship, and when you're gone, people are still running the room and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I've got a picture of me when I was like 12, when I think I was in Texas, in Dallas, watching one of the either Olympic or World Team trials, and I did the same thing. Dave Schultz was riding a bike, and I jumped down from the arena balcony and have a picture next to him, and I have like a tank top on and Jams shorts, which were
the Jams with the Z.
Yes. And I have another one with John Smith. From it, like you said, the accessibility of the best is so common in our sport. And I tell our kids and parents all the time, get your kids to Vegas, get your kids to these events where they could be walking around, with Jordan Burroughs and guys like that. And, like Coach said, when do you get a chance to do that with a LeBron James or with, a Patrick Mahomes or somebody like that? Like, it just doesn't happen on the field. And with wrestling, it happens all the time. And so I think that's one of the unique and great things about our sport. And for girls, I think the popularity of seeing the Adeline Grays and the Sarah Hildebrandts and those type of girls, and be like, that could be us, and they're standing right here having a conversation with me. They are invested in those men and women on the senior level are so gracious with their time. And anytime an athlete comes up that I've seen, they're taking time to talk to them and to give them some love. And so I think that is again just something special that we have in our sport.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like a couple of years ago, I was out at Arizona State, and Austin Roper was with me, and we went out one night, and then like Saturday, we're watching the fights at Lee Pritz's house, and like Forrest Molinari's there and Kayla Miracle, and like Austin's a pretty social dude, but he's like, Coach, what do I do? What do you mean? Just get a plate of food and start talking to him. And by the end of it, he's picking their brains about all this stuff. It was awesome. But they're just nice people. They're just people that are really good at something, and for me, these podcasts would not be successful if wrestling people were not accessible. I mean, there wouldn't be a Matt Chat if people were jerks and, they wouldn't talk to you. So, Mario, I asked you about something off the air, and I'm glad that the problem is not a USA Wrestling problem. So, because that would be bad. But you mentioned that I saw, we follow each other on social, kind of lay out what happened. And then what can we do to try to solve this?
Yeah. I really do think that it's great that it was just, circumstantial for a time, right? So it came out yesterday, and then we're here the following day. So what happened was, locally in our area, they released the postseason recognition awards, first team, second team, right? And
like an all metro, like an all city award kind of thing.
Yep, like an all county, right? So an all county, but for us, where we live, we're really in a hot spot of Michigan wrestling, right? So you have Detroit Catholic Central, Heartland, Brighton, like all within 20 minutes of our club, right? So you have 3 nationally ranked programs inside of 20 minutes. So to get all county, there's some it's nice, right? It's a nice recognition and stuff like that. Well, what happened is there was 3 girls that got recognized. One, Sabrina Noss, she made the first team. And then 2 other girls made it. Bring Green, go ahead.
Sabrina Noss is ranked #1 in the country, just to set the table for people.
Yeah, set the table. You're talking about #4 pound for pound. She's got 3 Fargo titles. She's a 3-time Michigan State champ. So by any metric, she is
probably good in the county. Probably good in the county.
Yeah. And so and then you have two other ones, right? So you'll have a Maggie Burma and Bryn Green. So you have two girls. We'll just call them wrestler, whatever. Yeah, regardless of name. Anyway, one of them is a two-time state champ as a sophomore. She All-American last year at the World Team Trials, and she pinned her way through the girls' high school state tournament. And so,
All right.
she did a good job, right? And then the other girl ranked like 10th or 11th in the country. She made the folk style national finals last year. She's ranked as high as 7 this year. So when the recognition comes out, they're both make second team. So you're talking about two girls who are getting recognized nationally, but they're getting second teamed, defaulted back at it locally. So
the county's just super deep, Mario. That's the problem.
super deep, super deep. But we had boys that did great, awesome. I'm all for recognition and whatever. But when we're talking about women right now, and so when that happens, it's okay. What is the metric? What did they have to do to get first team recognition? When I have somebody who they made it to the state tournament or they were a low placer in the state tournament. So I think my share was like, when you're talking about equity is who gets what, right? Not about trying to, be inclusive. I'm not trying to be inclusive. I'm trying to be recognized for my body of work. And so when you remove gender and you just look at wrestler B and wrestler G, these girls by all metrics should have been, recognized. So I think we're in a space where by being a female wrestler, is there equity in that? And yes, is it nice to be, to finally find one, but what do I really have to do to be a girl to make first team all county? Essentially, you have to be a Sabrina Noss, and there's not very many of those in the world. So what about these other two that got defaulted to second? And so there was talking points, and there was pretty good talking points on the feed or the thread or whatever. And so and I was like, well, I'm going to do this podcast tomorrow. Maybe we can get some feedback from some voices, right? Some people like yourselves that have experience in it, and people that are with boots on the ground through certain platforms. So I guess I hand that off and say, okay, what are your thoughts there? And how do we address it? And then how do we move forward?
So I'll give my thoughts and then give floor to Jason. I think you brought, a lot of good points, but one of the things you said, like, this is not participation ribbon time. Like, if you're being recognized for anything, like if somehow this podcast won podcast of the year, I hope it wouldn't just be because everybody else has won and I'm the only new one left. It'd be like, no, like you had some body of work, some interview that was groundbreaking. Maybe you just got somebody nobody ever had. So, we were joking about it off air. Like, how can you be top 20 in the country and probably not be, in your region? Like, I get sometimes two people live next to each other. Like if Ava Ward and Angelina Vargas live 5 minutes apart, one of them by definition has to be second team. I get it. But again, what a lot of these teams are picked, like in Missouri, they don't pick 14 weight classes. They just pick kids who are really good and make them first team. Like all the state champions are. Like if Jason Keck wins class 4 and I win class 3 in the same weight class and we're both undefeated, they're not going to pick. We're just both going to make the first team, which is kind of how it should be. Like, just because he was in a bigger class doesn't mean I couldn't have won that match or vice versa. So I think you mentioned something about just off the air, like, what are the goalposts? And I think that's criteria, right? Like, people are always going to coach to the rules, are always going to wrestle to the rules. Like, I don't want to go down a tangent, but like the grounded rule. Like, okay, you love it or hate it, you get near the edge, get yourself grounded. Until they change the rule, that's what you have to do. So my thought would just be, if they established a criteria, but people don't like to do that because then they got to be held accountable for it. Jason, your thoughts?
Well, number one, I think talking about it is essential. And when we do see these inequities, then we got to point them out. And and then after we point them out, the next thing is, okay, did we just drop the ball? Meaning whoever put the first team and second team together, do they say, hey, you have a great point that these two athletes are ranked, top 10 in the country, and somehow we have a 7th or 8th place boy that's ranked on the first team and they're ranked on the second team. They're state champs, or state finalists. The boys weren't. I think you start talking about that and creating dialogue, and then hopefully say, yeah, we did drop the ball there. And so the next time, if that's not pointed out, then the same inequity is going to happen year after year and throughout the country. And so I think by having it exposed, and, I think that for people that put rankings together and first teams and all that, there's the criteria is obviously always changing, and so that's a great thing with our sport too, is that we do need to recognize the women, and they are on equal footing. And maybe that hasn't been the case in the past because it hasn't been available, or it just hasn't been to the popularity of where it's at now with girls and women, but it's here and it's now. And so we need to make sure that the equity is there.
Well, everything both you guys said is true. And also women's wrestling or girls wrestling, depending on the age group, has developed. Like if you look at where men's wrestling was 10 years ago or 15 years ago versus women's, I'm sure men's wrestling has improved, but the slope of that improvement, is way shallower than the growth of women's or girls wrestling. But it's because of all the things you guys have talked about, literally what you guys are doing. Coaches that are good enough are coaching boys and girls, and they're not being separated. Like Matt Collum, who's a buddy of ours, just had a girl make the world team trial finals, and she just works out with everybody else. And, you look at the pin, I've been lucky enough to go to the pinnacles, like John Messenbrink, who is, part of the AWA crew. He wrestled for my dad in college when I was in high school. So I don't think they treat people differently. Like maybe you talk a little softer, but in general, it's like, hey, if you got to do 30 push-ups, you got to do 30 push-ups. I don't care, if your name's Susie or Bill, like you're going to do your 30 push-ups, And so the development of all of that, and then the equality that, like the Living the Dream Fund, that you can get the same amount of money on both sides and these other things. I think the old school thought is, well, if this girl can't beat this boy, then it shouldn't be the case. And then now you're into this whole other bucket of worms that, A, I don't want to get into, and B, I don't want to have to pay Keck for my attorney fees by saying something stupid. So but I think the point of it is, the thing that we always talk about in Weighing In our match chat is the lessons people learn from wrestling are not for one gender. Like we're all friends, like off this podcast, and we're all friends because we met through wrestling. And I think there's a mutual respect for what each person's doing here and how their level of success and growing the sport in each of their own ways. But we could have been 3 people just going through life, and if it wasn't for wrestling, we never would have known each other. And that shouldn't just be for men, period. That shouldn't just be for boys, period. And the discipline and the tenacity and the hard work ethic and getting your hand raised publicly, and the other person getting their hand raised publicly, and you having to deal with defeat and be gracious in winning and losing. Those are lessons boys and girls, men and women should learn. And if everybody did, our country and the world would be a lot better place, regardless of if it's men or women that are doing that. So
no, David, one thing on that, and Coach was talking about some of the matches, when you get into those All-American rounds, and whether your athlete, makes the podium or not, like we all know that the level of commitment, the hard work that's put in, the sacrifice, and if your wrestler comes up on the short end of the stick or not, you have that same level of respect for the body of work that the coaches have put in, that the parents have put in, that the athletes, that their training partners. And what I really enjoy is seeing that win or lose. And I could see that in how Izzy Martinez and Mark Perry, when they shook Welker's hand after the match, like I could see it in their face. Like they were empathetic human
There's
beings.
respect, yeah.
Of like, hey, I know that you put everything into this and you just came up short. And I don't know, that part of it I love. And again, like it would be a shame if girls and women didn't experience that as well.
Yeah, I think like there's a genuine respect, like you're saying. So so there's two things I want to get to. One I think is funny. The other one is just, let's talk about Vegas briefly. So we're recording this on April 19th, so we're really only like a week away, depending on which part of the schedule you're looking at. So Mario's got that smile on his face. Like, by the way, you cannot be around Mario and be in a bad mood. Like, it's impossible. I tried the day of the setup of the Michigan Border Brawl, couldn't do it. I was grumpy old man. I was Larry David, and he just kept me laughing. So, but tell me your thoughts, Mario, on Vegas, like what we're going to see. I will say this. I say this a couple times a year. Go to the U.S. Open. If you're a wrestling fan, go to the U.S. Open. You see the best wrestling. You get the best seats. The tickets are cheaper than NCAAs. You're sitting way closer to these people. You can sometimes walk up Matt's side. I said this before I ever worked for USA Wrestling. Go to the U.S. Open. All right, go ahead.
We're gonna see the best, right? We're gonna see the best America has to offer, and we're gonna see the best of different age groups. So
Yes.
You're gonna see young talent meet the young lion meets the old lion on so many different weight classes, and we're gonna get all the future stars with the rising stars, and it's an Olympic year. So everybody who has had a dream their entire life to maybe be an Olympian, they're going to take your last shot or your first shot right now, and this is the way to get there. They're going to go there and they're going to try to place at the Open, and they're going to try to qualify for the trial and then get back to work. So you're going to see, bodies fly and points scored and that's it. This really is the process, right? How does it work and how does it go? And this is, step one of people chasing that Olympic dream that's, getting ready to happen. So if you can get there, get there.
Yeah, I don't think it's probably another podcast worth, but like as soon as the Olympics end, especially this year with it being in 21, like you start working backwards, like, hey, if you make the 2023 world team at the senior level and you medal, you're in Final X. So like, for example, like a common thing like that most people understand, Jaden is moving up to 97 kilos now to try to knock out Snyder rather than go 92, then have to acclimate his body up, where Burroughs is doing the other approach. He's going to stay at 79, stay at the non-Olympic weight, try to medal, was a very likely, given his track record, make it to the Olympic trial semifinals and then go down. Although a buddy of mine gave me a very strong argument why he should move up, which is an entirely different podcast, but it's fascinating. So I will tell you, Keck, you don't know this story. You came down like a day later, but last year at Junior Duels, Mario and I are hanging out at the Doubletree Bar, which is infamous for where everything starts when the Junior Duel session is over. And he and I are talking for about 45 minutes, and he's got his coaching staff with him. And a guy finally goes, like, do I know you? And I go, no, I don't think so. Like, I maybe. And he goes, my name's Ben Giles, how do you say his last name?
Giles, yeah.
And Mario goes, hey, dummy, that's the guy that I did the preview Junior Duels podcast with. And Ben looks at me and goes, huh, I thought you'd have been bigger. So it's no matter how big, how well you think you're doing, you can be humbled in one sentence.
Oh my God.
So, well, listen, guys, I don't want to take too much of your time. I really appreciate it. I'm going to see, I think, Keck, are you going to Vegas?
I am. Yep.
All right. So we'll see everybody out there in a week. And again, thank you guys for everything you've done for what I'm trying to do with wrestling and for always being available to jump on. I'm sure Mario will have you on again late May to preview junior duels, and you can come up with the new technique all your kids are going to do from top this year. I will say this, Keck. So they had like 3 forfeits. One of their teams had 3 forfeits, right, Mario?
Yeah.
Cadets or juniors. And we're sitting in the bar, and I'm like, how you guys? He goes, we're going to make the finals. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, we're going to make the finals. I go, dude, you're down 15 points. For people that don't understand, and a pin is worth 5 in freestyle. He goes, we're going to pin everybody. Because they're just going through the lineup like, we're going to pin here, we're going to pin here, we're going to pin here. And I was like, I'm like, this is coach's optimism. Like, this is like alcoholic optimism. And
yeah, a couple pops in, and you're like,
yeah, a couple pops
we
in.
can do it. We're going to do it.
Watch. Everybody. And he goes, we got something I'm going to show you tomorrow, but we can pin everybody in this one move. And it's the semis, and I walk by, and they've only given up 15 points. The only points they've given up for the 3 forfeits. And I look over, and like he's in the middle of coaching, and it goes to the 32nd. And he must have seen me on the side of my eyes. He looks, he points the score, and he goes, told you, dog. It's like, this man called his shot the day before, and they're all doing the same move from the top. I'm not going to give it away. Y'all can go watch the film. Okay. I'll give track and flow their love. They can get some more hits. But, just it was funny. Because there was a lot. That's a fun trip. So anyway, want to thank you guys for everything. And thank everybody that's watching and listening. We'll speak to y'all next week.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.